This is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. Take our hands, we're off to Never Never Land.
Hello, kiddies. We're going to have a real good time together. We are. And no, we are. So our guest today is Aubrey Logan.
Yes.
And unfortunately, you couldn't make it out of an actual paying job.
Unfortunately.
Yes. So it's just me. And I apologize in advance that you have to listen to just me.
That's a gift for everybody. The
Is
gift
it
that keeps
though?
on giving.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of nice for me to actually get to listen like a listener too.
That's true. That's like the David Gilmour talked about, I think it was on the Wall tour, that he got furious with Roger Waters about something. And because they only did like 6 dates on it, that he like threw his guitar and walked off stage and ended up going to the soundboard in the back of the, I was going to say theater, Coliseum they were playing at. And he said it was the only time he got to see Pink Floyd live.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, yeah, we're pretty good.
Like, what do you know?
Yeah. But Aubrey is a jazz pop singer, I think, of the... Oh, here comes Warren now. You want to say hi, Warren?
Hi, Warren.
Yeah. But she has a new album out called Standard, and it is all jazz standards. And it's fun. And, you don't think... Very rarely is the trombone like a lead instrument.
Right.
And I think people also don't appreciate how hard it is to play that instrument.
Oh, completely. I don't think anyone has a clue unless that was your, weapon of choice in middle school band.
Right. And you could really mess a person up with that thing, that slide.
Oh, for sure.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a lovely talk with Aubrey. Or I guess I did. You just, yeah. So enjoy the episode while Heidi sits at the soundboard and watches Pink Floyd.
Yes.
Play Comfortably Numb. How does one get into the trombone? What age were you where you turned to your parents and said, Mom, Dad, I'd like to be a jazz trombonist?
Right. Well, I'll back up a little bit. My parents are music teachers. My mom is my mom is a choir director. My dad's a band director. K through 12 music. They taught, 35-year public school teaching veterans. And that's how they met. And it wasn't really exactly the fact that they taught me music, although that did, because I would overhear them teaching private lessons. There'd always be teenagers in and out of the house just taking lessons, and I'd hear their repertoire and like memorize it, indirectly. But I wanted to sing from a very young age because of who they were playing in the house on their own playlists. So they'd be playing Stevie Wonder and Dolly Parton and Beethoven and Rachmaninoff and the Eagles and James Taylor, all within the span of 1 hour. And as a kid, I just thought that was normal. I just thought that's how people listen to music. And so I would imitate these singers. They would play. I would imitate Whitney Houston. I would imitate Karen Carpenter. Not with as much emotion and feeling, because when you're a child, hopefully you don't have that. But with imitation, because that's what kids do. And so I did that, and I loved it. And so I got into singing very early, like age 5, 6, 7. I would start to sing national anthems at Seahawks games and Mariners games, and where I'm from in Seattle. And I would, do that. And then when I was, so I wanted to have that kind of career before the trombone came into the picture. And so the way the trombone came into the picture was a little later, I was doing musical theater roles in my community. Had my first job doing that as a, before age 10. And then by the time I'm 12, 13, I want to be back at school with my friends, like it's very important to me. Because everything at age 13 is a total crisis of life. And yeah, so I was back in, you miss quite a bit of school doing the musical theater thing. And so I'm back in school with my friends and I'm in the nerdy kids classes. And they're all my friends. And my mom is the choir director at my school at the time. So there's no way I'm going to be in choir. But I missed the music and my friends were all in band. And so my mom asked her colleague, the band director, can Aubrey join band? And he said, sure, what does she play? And she said, well, nothing. But she reads music, she plays a little piano, and she sings, so she'll learn fast because all the kids had started band a couple years before me. So I'm like, Mom, you can't let me in there. That looks bad, and I can't look like I just joined, and he let me in the regular band, even though I'm not in beginning band. But he let me in. We did tell the truth. I could read music. I just didn't have an instrument. And my dad,
Right.
who was a trumpet player, brought home several instruments from his school where he was a principal at the time, like from his band director. He brought home a saxophone, a trombone, a French horn, a clarinet, a flute. I tried to play them all in one night. And I could make a sound on the trombone. And I had reference, thanks to my parents' eclectic taste in music. I had a picture in my mind of bands like Chicago and James Brown. And I'd seen a trombone. I knew what it sounded like. It's very similar to the human voice, which is what I already used all the time because it's so flexible. And so I picked it because of that and kind of like crammed a year's worth of trombone in 2 weeks because I wanted to pass my friends, not just join them, but pass them. And I never put it down. So when I started playing the trombone, and I really do thank my middle school band director for this because, excuse me, my camera.
Yeah, quite all right.
Yeah, there we go. I do thank my middle school band director for this. He exposed us I joined the middle school jazz band and he exposed us quickly to Count Basie and taught us how to swing. And that's not something you can really learn late in life very
No, you
well.
cannot.
And
No.
so because of that, I fell in love with jazz. And then I realized, I'm playing jazz and all these songs I'm playing are kind of familiar because a lot of them were in musical theater, which I was exposed to already, except the key difference is these singers are singing it the way they want. Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, whereas like all these musical theater folks are singing it the same way every night and with like a ton of enunciation and no variation. So I'm like, ooh, I can improvise within a framework on this music and I can play the trombone and sing. So that's why all that jazz came into my pop writing even when I write like this album, Sunshine is Expensive, it's clearly a lot of pop songs that I've written, but like it's very jazzy. And this next album is a traditional jazz album, which I haven't done yet.
Little did you know, I'm assuming looking at all these instruments laid before you, that you're picking probably one of the harder ones to play well.
I had an inkling because I did realize it didn't have buttons on it.
Right. That's okay. That's a tip off. Sure.
I had an inkling. I think it's hard to play. It's hard to play well. It is kind of like I went to Berkeley College of Music and like all the saxophone players are practicing for hours, and physically the trombone can't do that. You can't do that. Your muscles will fatigue and you have to stop.
Right.
And then like as far as playing fast, yeah, there's definitely a bit of a handicap on the trombone.
And it's interesting too. I mean, to at that age to pick jazz, to pick something that's like you said, to learn to swing correctly in music. It's hard enough to master a straight rhythm and a straight beat, and then to add this other wrinkle in it. I mean, was that a hard? I guess it was just sort of like, well, this is what music is. If this is kind of your first time playing in that way,
Yeah,
that you
and I
didn't
had
know it
been
was hard because you didn't know any other way.
swing sounds very easy, and it's supposed to. So it's truly the only reason it's difficult for people that are maybe older to learn it is just the same reason why it's difficult to learn a language when you're older. So swing feels good and it feels a certain way. And it's really hard to, like, I'm learning French right now and I can't get the French oo vowel to save my life. Like, because
Hmm.
we don't have that in English. We don't have that sound. And that's the same in certain genres, certain feels of music. So it wasn't necessarily difficult for me to feel how swing is supposed to feel. And part of that is because my parents were already playing it in my ears growing up. They were already playing um, Clark Terry and Dexter Gordon and all of that and Louis Armstrong. I was hearing it my whole life. So it was just like, oh, this is how you apply it, which my band director, there is math to swing. It's, two triplets tied to two eighth note triplets tied to one eighth note triplet, but like,
That's it. Sure.
yeah, but
Yeah.
yes, it's hard. And it's not hard for me now. It's a feeling. It's just like how, um, certain funk artists sound so funky, and funk was in my vocabulary growing up too. What was not, and I can compare it to Latin because that was not in my vocabulary growing up. And I was on tour recently, before March 2020,
Sure.
or
Right.
at the beginning of March 2020. And we were in Europe with my drummer, my LA drummer, and I went to Europe, did the tour. We had my friends, my backup singers from London join us, and an Italian bass player and a Spanish piano player, but he was from the Canary Islands, but which is Spain. But they have a ton of Latin music in their country, in their island, on their islands, and he grew up with it. And so he would play piano with such a beautiful Latin feel. Like, we would fake Latin in some of my songs, but like when he would play it, it would sound real. And I'm kind of asking, why does he sound so authentic on that? And when I try to go into that, I sound not authentic. And it's the same reason. I mean, yeah, there's a math to it. There's a push-pull in Latin rhythms that I can calculate and understand, but I don't
Right.
sound like I've been doing it my whole life. Whereas swing, I sound like I've been doing it my whole life because I have.
Yeah, it's one of those, I feel like, of genres, it's hard to fake.
Yes.
It's sort of like, it's hard to fake sincerity. It's hard to fake knowing that innately that swing and that rhythm of this music.
Mhm.
So you go to Berkeley,
Mm.
which is incredibly well known for, I was going to say music, but
Contemporary
yeah,
music. Yeah.
and jazz in
Jazz and pop.
particular.
Yeah.
The people who have come from there, the people who've taught there. Where did you go after Boston?
Los Angeles. I had connections there with people that were influencing me and helping me out. Patrice Rushen, Solomon Burke, Pat Boone. You can't make these things up.
If you need people to influence you
Yeah,
and support you, those are good ones.
yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And so I'm born and raised on the West Coast, so New York just didn't feel as home. To me, even though it's a hub that I go to often, but like, it just wasn't going to be where I lived. And my husband and I moved to LA, like, I don't know, a year after I graduated Berkeley. And that's where I spent the last basically 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years of my life. Although it was home base because I spent the last 8 or so years touring mostly. But
Right.
but that was home base, and it was a wonderful place to be. Just awesome. Especially being new to, a very new artist, unknown, which I still kind of am, but like, very, like, no, like, basically having to pay people to come to my shows, not the other way around.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, so that's where I went next, and that's where you know, music school was over, and how to run your business school had begun. And, I didn't know how hard that would be, but I don't think anybody does. I don't think that's a normal thing to know. And I I learned how to be an artist, not just a musician, by doing, which I learned at Berkeley as well, because I was still gigging and doing stuff, but it was more like Berkeley was a place where I was doing school and being a professional musician outside of school. But as far as being an artist who runs a business, that didn't really kick in until then.
Right. Well, if you knew what it was, you probably wouldn't go into it and go through the
It's
hardships of
very,
being an artist.
if we knew our futures, we wouldn't be able to handle it, would we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I certainly don't regret any of it, and I thank my manager for sticking with me this long and kind of going, wow, she doesn't fit in any of the record labels' wants and needs. It was a very interesting mix of the record labels wouldn't accept me / they would if so
Hmm.
it was always that kind of dance. And I really thank the fans for sticking with me, the OGs. It's the only reason I have a Billboard thing on my wall is because of them. They pre-ordered albums
Right.
before they're out. They follow me. They are essential, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart, truly. Yeah.
Well, and you uh, pick a sort of difficult genre that's not necessarily burning up the pop charts. You pick like it's just there's sort of this winnowing of everything, and then
Mm.
you pick something that a label, like you said, this combination of sort of pop music and jazz
Yeah.
is a hard thing to classify. It's a hard thing to put on the back of a poster as sort of
Mhm.
like as a here you
Yep.
go, this is what you're going to see.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that pull to like, I need to try something different. I need to try to streamline this uh, sound I'm hearing, or is this just I have to stay true to what's inside my head and get it out to people?
It's both. It's both.
Hmm.
There's a season for everything, basically. So, I am definitely willing to make some concessions, and I have, and you can hear it in my albums. I mean, you might not be able to pinpoint it, but I can. And,
Wow.
and yet there's still things I love and still things I like. It took a little maturing and a little humbling and a little tamping down of my pride to say, okay, I need to present this somehow. It's not that I need, and what I didn't do was go full on pop or go really full on jazz. What I didn't do was either of that. And
Hmm.
neither did Snarky Puppy, neither does Wolfpack, neither does Emily King, neither do all these people my age doing this.
Right.
And I attribute that to the social media world we live in, not the 90s record business we used to have that I was too young to be a part of. So because of social media, I get to show people what I do
Hmm.
on a daily basis. And so they're like, "Oh, got it." Whereas it's hard to explain, but it's easy to show and it's easy to listen to,
Right.
So, that alone, and that's another conversation, but that alone changed the record industry, changed the label industry. Labels aren't what they were. That's okay. It's just different. And it's cool because I didn't grow up in New Orleans in the 1930s, although that might have been kind of fun and kind of hard. But
Mm.
if I
Yeah.
would have, I would be playing music very differently, and I would be
You'd
playing
also
one
probably be
kind.
dead.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Be a bummer.
I grew up hearing every type of music, and so did everyone that is my age because we have the internet. So
Right.
it's changed.
And like you said, it seems like in many ways a blessing that you have this ability to reach directly to an audience
Mhm.
and say, check this out.
Yes.
And that you have this ability to interact with them and
Mhm.
reach them.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to sort of the life of a recording and touring musician, is it what you thought it would be? Is it something
No.
you still enjoy? Because you always hear these stories of people by a certain age getting road weary and just being like, I can't do this again. Do you still enjoy it?
I do. I do. It might change how it looks. It might be more intense in certain areas and less intense in other areas as things go forward. However,
Hmm.
of course you get shocked by how hard something is. But I think that's probably the truth with anybody in life, with any job, with
Hmm.
or just with anything in life, like relationships or marriage or kids, or I mean, not that I have kids yet, but I'm sure you think it's gonna be something, and then you realize, oh, Instagram versus reality.
Right.
And yes, absolutely. I've had moments where I've been on the road going, why do I do this? Nobody knows how hard it is because I'm trying to look like I'm having fun all the time because that's my job, but it's actually kind of hard and it's weirdly public, but it's also weirdly private. And so, yeah, of course. But I think that's just normal. I just think it's normal for people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And is your husband a musician as well?
By he's a bass player, but he not by trade. He's a software developer.
So you go out and tour and he
Mhm.
is staying home. He's
Holds
not
the
out on
fort
the road
down,
with
yeah.
you.
Mhm.
That's got to be hard.
It's well, sure, yes. What's hard being apart isn't as hard as being apart while I'm having a hard time.
Mm,
Like when I call him from the road saying, "I've had a great day, the show was great. Um, I loved the audience, miss you, bye." He's like, "Cool,"
right.
he's not
Yeah.
like enjoying the fact that I'm not home, but he's like, "Okay, great. It's cool." Like
Right.
when I call him going, and I'm in Russia and you're at home and I'm crying, then he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is really tough because I can't be there." That's
Yeah.
so it's actually not the being apart for periods of time in and of itself isn't really the hardest part. It's when
Right.
there's problems and we're not with each other
Right.
that it's hard.
It is Europe's yours. I feel like Europe has always been considered sort of a place that appreciates jazz more than the US. Is that something you find, or is there any other part of the world that really digs what you're doing?
Yeah, Europe. Yeah, that's easy place to
Okay.
go perform. I don't have to advertise much. No. Yeah.
Hmm. And then as far as the records go, this is
Mhm.
your third album. How has that process changed for you? And what have you learned sort of in the process of going into a studio and working on an album?
Well, it changed because of the events of 2020.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Um, and I had moved cities in the middle of that. So I made an album in a brand new city with brand new people. So what changed was it was a lot easier to make an album while not touring. It was a lot easier to focus and get it done very thoroughly. Um, but what I've learned is, it's never going to be perfect to my ears. And it's a beautiful thing to push record, play the song, and that's what you get. And you might play it better in a few years, but this is what people are gonna listen to in their Spotify. Because I still do a very live situation with my recording. I mean, this is a jazz album, so we were no tracking, we were all in the room, we pushed record, you're getting one take, if we didn't, it wouldn't sound like jazz.
Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can you hear a pitter pat? And that happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with those blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. This rover crossed over. If I never had a cent, I'd be rich as Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street.
Aubrey's new album, Standard, is available this Friday, May 21st. For more information, check out her website, aubreylogan.com.
You can follow us on all the various socials. You can check out our website at rockandrollgradschool.com for more grad school content. And please leave us a review on iTunes. We're tired of asking our family members to do so.
Today's show was produced by myself and Heidi Hedquist. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. Our graphic designer is Samantha Mastonen. This one's for Philippe. Thank you, good night, and may all your favorite bands stay together.